Hi, I'm Sheila Layton. Welcome to the Beyond Coincidence Show, where every moment holds a miracle and we talk about seeing the hand of God in our lives. Call it a God wink or a tender mercy or whatever you want. Everyone on this show has seen the hand of God or their higher power in their lives in a very real and personal way.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Beyond Coincidence podcast. So I have a pretty special guest with me today. It is my brother-in-law, Craig. I have known Craig for over 40 years. He's one of the good guys. He's had a really cool career, and I'm sure that the experience he's going to share today is one that is probably not very common to anybody. So without further ado, Craig, I will let you introduce yourself and what life looks like for you today.
Sure. Craig Jones. I'm a 60-year-old American living down in Las Vegas, Nevada, married to Sheila's sister. So we're in-laws here. I'm a father of 3 sons, been married for going on 39 years, have 3 granddaughters. And I think one of the things that's most unique about my current situation is I'm a pilot. My second career, the first one and the longest being a military pilot in the U.S. Air Force, flying F-15, F-16 fighters for 26 years. And so a lot of that job shaped where we lived and the experiences that my family and I had, and many of the parts of my life that are significant came through that career. So that's
what are you doing today?
Now I am in the latter part of my second career as an airline pilot. After retiring from the military, I now fly for a major airline in the U.S. that flies primarily domestically around the country. So,
great. Okay. All right, Craig, let's go back. Tell me about Craig Jones growing up. Like, how did your family, who was in your family? What was your family life like? How did religion play a part, if any, in your growing up? And that sort of thing.
Okay, sure. My parents were both born and raised in Utah, one in Ogden, one in Salt Lake. And they were married in the Salt Lake Valley, and I was born there. But then my father was also military. And so we moved around a lot. I was predominantly raised in Germany and in Washington, D.C. My parents were both. So my grandmother was the first member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She converted in her early years, and both of my parents were members of the practicing members of that church, and so that was a predominant influence in our home. We would attend religious services together as a family. Spiritual, religious things were talked about often. And so that was kind of the background of my growing up. My parents didn't have the same level of commitment to their faith, and that created a lot of conflict, honestly, between my parents. They were both very good people. We had a lot of friction in my home because of those values off and on, but I grew up in a loving, pretty typical home.
So how did that affect you growing up? Like, did it make you want to draw closer to God or kind of pull back a little bit? How did that affect you?
How did that affect me? I felt the good part of the religious practice, bringing about the better parts of what was happening in my family. It was the disloyalty to faith that was bringing about most of the tension. So I think pretty early I saw a contrast. Neither of my parents were perfect in their practice, but what they did, the principles they taught me, they were pretty clear to see. As the principles were followed, they brought kind of harmony, and when they weren't, it brought conflict. So I think I was pretty convinced early that that the principles that I was taught in the home and reinforced at church, they were good. I didn't have a feeling that I had to rebel against my parents, what they were trying to teach me. A lot of it made sense as I practiced it. It became, the fruit of it became obvious. And I was pretty, content.
Yeah. So then I know that you grew up in DC and then you moved to Utah in your
High school.
sophomore year, grade 10?
Yes.
And so what was that like going from, I'm assuming DC, not a lot of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day
Yeah,
Saints,
that was a good point.
Utah, right? Which is like crazy.
Right. Yeah, I was a minority. Many of my friends in Maryland, which, I was very social, had a lot of really good friends. It's from school, from sports teams, neighbors. Most of them had Christian backgrounds. It was not that different. Some of the practices of the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints, were a little different, the smaller congregation. So I didn't see that much of a conflict when I was younger. As I started getting into the later junior high and just about into high school, many of my friends were starting to experiment with worldly kind of things, and the conflicts were becoming a lot more obvious. But when I moved to Utah, it seemed quite different in that, like you said, there was a large number of members of the same church that I belonged to and practiced, but different varying levels of commitment. So even that was still the same. I had good people in both areas, just more opportunity to have formal teaching in seminary or practice with the local congregation more in Salt Lake. But honestly, I am thankful for the opportunity I had to grow up in an area where my faith was not the mainstream. I had to look at it a little bit harder.
Right, you had to sort of find God. It wasn't everywhere.
It wasn't. And the choice to follow what I believe God wanted me to do, was a little different from the world that I lived in Washington, D.C. than it was in Salt Lake City. In Salt Lake, it was kind of more mainstream.
Yeah. So I know you served a mission. Where did you serve your mission?
I did.
What sort of made you decide to go on a mission?
Sure. Okay. My grandmother, who had been the first member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, served a mission when she was very young, like 18.
Wow. And that wasn't common.
No, it wasn't. She served 3 missions in her life. And when she was trying to decide to go on a mission, she received a lot of conflicting information. Some were trying to convince her not to go after she had received her call. And so she had an experience where she was trying to figure out, should I go on this mission that I've accepted this call, or should I back out? And she turned to scriptures, turned to Luke chapter 2, verse 45, the last verse there. And it says, he who, having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. She believed that was her answer. Later on in her life, she had that in German. It was carved, those words, and we hung above the doorway in her house. We saw it. We all knew the story well. My father had served a mission. My older brother, my older sister also served. So from very, very young age, I was exposed to lots of missionary experiences and stories. As I watched my older young men, young women, 4, 5, 6 years ahead of me, making the decision to go on missions, I felt a lot of good feelings as I watched them prepare, as I watched them decide, as I watched them leave and share their experiences when they came home. So I had over a long time decided that I was going to go on a mission. I knew years and years and years before I actually went. The decision was made so young that I don't even really know when it was. It was pretty easy by the time it came to go.
So it wasn't a hard one. So you served in
Kobe, Japan.
In Japan.
My older brother also went to Japan, so I share that with him. We both were served in Japan as missionaries.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So you kind of always then sort of believed in God from the young time.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yes, I think belief in God is it's like a muscle. It's something you strengthen, you learn, you develop. Is it always there? Maybe. I was trying to think of the very first times I felt like I had felt the influence that I later now believe is God. And it was when I was singing songs as a child in my home. My mother had a piano. We would gather around and sing. We went to church on Wednesdays to primary. We sang songs like "I am a child of God," and I felt it. And then we had
a physical warmth or whatever. Okay?
I felt it as joy, as peace, as happy.
Yeah.
You continue to be taught more and more about faith in God and Jesus Christ. I was taught about prayer. I was taught about scriptures, that the Bible, the Book of Mormon, other scriptures. We read them, frequented together as a family. Once in a while, a little bit would even sink in, to a young boy's brain.
Yeah.
I remember hearing music, being in maybe a worship service where somebody was sharing something in their own faith that just felt right, felt good. And it was kind of developing it later on as I got more analytical in my school years when I was the one making decisions. I came to questions. I would search the answer to questions. Got the answers to many.
Search the answer to questions. Would you be like read the scriptures or pray, or what did you do for that?
Yeah, normally it would be, is this something that I believe because my parents taught me, or is this something that I know for myself? I tried the example of scripture characters. There's myriads of individuals that I read about who were also searching for what they believed, what they knew. They went into the wilderness and prayed. There's stories of Jesus Christ going into the wilderness and fasting. I took those opportunities for myself. I tested it. It's interesting because as you sent me questions ahead of time, one of them said, when? As if there was a time that I could identify. I could identify times that I searched. I could identify times that I went down and knelt next to my bed in the basement. The time that the answers came was a little less exact. It was piece by piece, here and there. Sometimes when you didn't expect it. Sometimes when you're just watching the sunrise or out in nature. Sometimes when, like I said, when I saw friends sharing their examples and their stories, there's many times those bricks of testimony started to really build up until by the time I was in high school, going to college, deciding to go on a mission, I felt pretty strong in my faith in the existence of a God, the fact that he had a purpose for me on the earth, that Jesus Christ's life and his atonement was a central part of that, and that following Jesus Christ would bring me the blessings of joy, happiness, peace, that I had read about, that I felt before. So, but by the time I was into high school and early college, I had I feel like the muscle was getting pretty strong by then.
Yeah. So when you say, in those earlier days when you were praying for answers and that sort of thing, how did those answers come to you? Obviously they were small, probably. They were small questions, small answers, but
Sure.
How did they come?
Almost never exactly the way I expected it or when I expected it. I was in the missionary training center in a small district, and there was people there who I had known for a long, long time that I wanted to go on a mission, and it was the right thing for me. And I was hearing these stories of lots of people who were sharing these experiences about how they had just the night before or just the week before had this amazing explanation that they would confirm that they really should be on the mission that they had decided to go on. And I was thinking like, wow, I haven't really felt that. I didn't really think about that. And so I actually did. I knelt down one night and I prayed. I said, I already believe I should be here. Is there some other, feeling that why haven't I felt what these guys are saying? And it was interesting. The next day was a P Day, and it was right before we were going to leave for Japan. So we went to the mall to pick up the things we needed to do. We were listening to worldly music. I was distracted by, cute young women in the mall and all those distractions that I didn't see as a missionary. And then my companion and I came back into the MTC on our way back, and the classes were in session. It was completely quiet. There was nobody else around. And we walked past a picture of Jesus Christ that was in the lobby there. And as I was walking past that picture, looking up at that, I had this was one time where I really did feel like it, just a whole warmth, starting at the top of my head and going through my body. And the feeling I had there was, you didn't need the answer that other person did in order to convince themselves to be on a mission, because you felt that feeling that you just felt as you watched back to that picture 100 times in your life. So it wasn't one time. That was just a reminder of the 100 times I felt it before.
Right. And I think that's probably, like you said, faith is a muscle. That's pretty normal, I think, is line upon line through small and simple things, one little bit at a time, we build that foundation. And so he had already done that. Not that it can't happen the other way, but I think that's more rare for you to, I can honestly say for me, I don't think I have ever knelt down and prayed for something and had an answer instantly, ever. I don't think that could ever happen. It happens to people, but it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So you already had that, like you say, the Lord said, Craig, you already know.
But it also helped me realize that that's the feeling you have been having almost your entire time you've been here at the MTC. And so just because it wasn't so dramatic yesterday and the other, 59 days you were here, as it was just that last minute, if you look back, you could see it during the devotionals when the apostles were speaking, during a testimony meeting with all the missionaries, during your scripture study. Yeah, it was nearly constant in lower doses.
And I think what you said right there is the key. When you look back, right? Yeah. When you look back, and that's why I think it's so important to write these experiences down, because when you look, something you think, oh, this was awesome, I will always remember that. But as we get older, we know we don't remember stuff as good.
You're right.
And you'll miss the details. And I feel like it's in those little details where the Lord is like, see this, see this, see this. Like for you, as you looked back, you're like, oh man, I have been feeling the Spirit this whole time.
That's right.
Which is fantastic. Okay. So I know that there is an experience that you want to share, a special experience, and you can be as open and vulnerable as you want, or however you want to share it. Give some background, and I'll just let you do your thing.
Yeah. Well, I've been pondering this question for a while, and the thought that I had, I think I really wanted to emphasize how broad God's influence in our life is through many, many different places, people, and times. So, the situation is early in my military pilot training. The first 2 years of becoming a military fighter pilot is very competitive. In order to get selected out of college, only about 50% of the applicants were able to select to get to go to pilot training. And then at pilot training, about 30% fail. They wash out. They're eliminated. And then just the top 10% or so get selected to go fly the fighters. And that's what I wanted to do. So I was to that point. It had been a good solid year plus of a lot of competition, a lot of challenges, a lot of trials. I was on the path that I wanted to go. And so I've been selected for F-15 training, which is another really difficult 6-month course. I would say that those 6 months were more difficult than any 6 months of college. or anything before that. So it was a very, very challenging time. The course is very fast paced. It's very, very expensive, obviously, to train a pilot, and they don't want to waste resources on someone who's not going to cut it. So they want to identify early those who are not going to succeed. Some of that is really fair and open, legitimate grading on your performance on flying. But there's a small group, a small culture. Luckily, they were the minority, but they felt kind of a special role to weed out the weak swimmers, or to weed out those who they believed didn't fit their ideal. The kind of, hey, if I'm going to war, I want to know the guy next to me is not going to let me down. But some of their views were different. Some of them focused a little bit more on maybe a worldly preparation for, a manly toughness that involved, a lot of, chest beating, alcohol drinking, show that you're tough, one of the guys kind of thing. So I was really enjoying the flying part, but a little bit of the culture around me was challenging. I wanted to obviously not give in to values of things that I didn't accept, but I also wanted to be a team player whenever I could. So the situation is building as I advance through the F-15 training after a certain point, that when you've succeeded, they allow you to take the F-15 $40 million 2.5 speed times the speed of Mach supersonic fighter, solo. They give you the keys and you're gone, and you do that. It's a real milestone.
It had to be terrifying the first time you did that, wasn't it?
Exciting. So exciting. Yes. And then after that event, after your classmates, a group of about 10 of you, they have a big celebration. It's a party, and it's kind of a fraternity sort of atmosphere, with your pilot buddies, but also kind of in that party mentality that the world has, alcohol and the stuff like that. It's a little bit of a hazing too. The older pilots are, kind of going to whip the younger ones into shape. I was definitely the younger pilot, So this event is coming, and I have heard about what's going to happen and the kinds of things that are going to be there. And I know that there's going to be conflict with the values that I chose for myself, especially with consumption of alcohol and the word of wisdom, something I don't do at all. I also knew that this was back in the 90s. Political correctness hadn't corrected some of the things that needed to be corrected. And they used to hire strippers to come to this party. And it was that kind of a situation, not till the end. And so, I'm stuck with this dilemma. It's like, I'm a classmate. I need to fit in. This is a formal ceremony to give me they give me your call sign there. They name you and stuff like that. But there also is going to be areas that are lines that I just cannot cross. And for weeks before this event was coming, I spent a lot of time on my knees, trying to get help, figuring out how can I succeed. I mean, in my faith tradition, some of the stories in the Book of Mormon, there's amazing characters, these stripling warriors that were soldiers that saved their nation in a military time of conflict, someone I could admire and look up to. I had those kind of stories, but then there's also corrupt forces around there. So I wanted to try to marry both of these. I wanted to be, a valiant, diligent military officer, but hold on to my values at the same time. And so I'm searching, for weeks before, praying, trying to look for answers, trying to figure out how to make this work. And I decide, I'm going to participate up to the level that I can. And when it's appropriate, I will withdraw, and I take whatever friction or feedback that may deliver, just have to deal with the heat, So the night is starting, it's okay. It's a party. It's a fraternity sort of a feeling. As alcohol flows over hours, people go down, it turns into more of a mob mentality. it was getting to about the limit where I couldn't be there anymore. And I knew that it wouldn't be long before it was going to degenerate into, having dancers and stuff like that there. And this is starting to really feel uncomfortable to me. I'm really searching for what to do when a guy comes to the door. He was the one that was in charge of this whole party, a phenomenal individual, the top pilot in my class, stood about 6'4", 210 pounds, just a man's man and a really good man. He came to the door and he said, "Hey, the dancers are out at the front gate. They can't get in. Someone has to go escort them in. All you guys have been drinking. Is there anybody who hasn't been drinking that would be willing to go pick them up?" He knew that I was the only one in that area, in that party, that was not drinking. So I say, "Sure, yeah, I'll go get him." And so I start to head for the door. What I don't see is that he slips out. And when I go outside to my car, he comes out the other door. And he said, "Craig, I know you don't want to be in that party." He says, "I haven't been drinking either." He says, "I'll go get him." He says, "You can just slip out and nobody will ever know." And so I did. I went home. That was the biggest weight off of the challenge that had been facing me. And it was just one of many, many times that faithful people, this friend of mine who he was not a member of my same faith, but supported me through a trial. I could just see how people like that were inspired to help me through my entire career. And as I look back, like you emphasized, remembering, I could remember tens of dozens of stories where other people were inspired to help me with situations and challenges I was dealing with. And that's God's hand in my life, inspiring Kirk Schauger on the night of the solo party and many others through my career. So it was wonderful to see his hand working in my life through other people.
And do you think that's often, right? That's often how our prayers are answered. And I've said to my children before, if you have a question and you're praying about something, pay attention to what's going on around you. Pay attention to who randomly comes into your life and says something or does something. What song comes on the radio? I think that's the way the Lord works, is through other people. We are.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Craig, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Have you written that experience down somewhere?
I have. I've had lots of opportunities over the years to work with youth. I went to girls' camp for 6-8 years. I always had speaking assignments, and so I've gone through and I've chosen a 10 or 15 military stories where there was good lessons learned. Right now, I'm in the process of rereading my missionary journals and condensing them down into just the key stories. The small plates.
That's fantastic. So this is a question that I just want to throw out there for you is, was there ever a time when you were in the jet that you felt the Spirit whisper something to you? And would you be okay to share it? Just take a second and share just a quick time. I know it's kind of an on the spot sort of a thing. And I know that you lost dear friends in the military, and that has been 4 dear friends in the military. And that has been really, really a challenge. And I'm sure that was a time when you were like, "Oh, really, God, this is kind of scary."
Yeah. No, I've thought about that a lot. Those 4 friends were the first 4 stories that I thought about, when I started the process of cataloging some of my stories. I think that I think there was many, many times where I had close calls, decisions to make, where I was able to achieve a peaceful situation. Being low on fuel in the winter in the Netherlands, with the field we're going to go to closed because of weather, and we're diverting, and and your heart is racing, and you have enough gas for, one more approach, and you have to do it right, and to feel a peaceful feeling coming over you as you're concentrating, doing everything that you were trained to do, but knowing that, this is for real at this time. I felt peace, felt calm. I felt like I was able to concentrate. That was a strength that allowed me to be successful in my career. And that piece is part of the life that you have. Yeah. So
I'm assuming that every time you got in that plane, you said a prayer.
Well, no, I didn't. I said a prayer. I said a prayer every morning.
Oh, every morning. Yeah.
I said a prayer every night. I said a prayer. I had a pattern. 4,000 hours in an F-15. You only get an hour and 15 minutes per flight. That's 3,000 times. It became so commonplace to me. I did it every single day. And so, no, I didn't feel the need to cross myself or say a prayer just because I'm about to get into that airplane. That's part of daily life.
Right, that's true.
I do it every day.
Rhythms, right? The holy rhythms of life, of saying your prayers every morning when you get out of bed, and every night, and those prayers just carry with us throughout the day.
Now, I guess so for my first combat mission, after years of training, where I know that I'm going to take my missiles and I'm going to go across this border. Yeah, I on that day, I have to think about. I'll go back and look at my journals and say, did I pray differently that day? Maybe, but I think it's the prayer every day. It's the holy rhythm. It's the compounding lifestyle of always being ready to have a prompting, not necessarily begging for a certain one right now today. It's kind of expecting them, really.
Yeah.
So
my final question to you then, Craig, is why do you think it is important to recognize the hand of God in your life?
Yeah. Because we're forgetful. If it goes unrecognized and then unrecorded, then it's not remembered, and you forget it, and you become blind to it. After a while, you don't see it at all. I think that because I knew that I was going to talk with you today, I spent more time remembering. I spent time thinking about it, pondering about it, and I had to decide which story to share with you, which meant that I thought about different stories.
Right.
And you can't start doing that very long before feelings come back, before memories lead to the next memory. It's a chain that you have to keep moving.
Right.
And if you don't spend time trying to recognize or remember, then it's just swallowed up in the daily grind, and it goes unnoticed and forgotten.
And then people think it's a coincidence, but we know it's not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
Well, unless you have anything else you want to share, Craig, I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this for me and coming on and sharing your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences. I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for asking me to remember, because it's a blessing.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you have an experience where you have seen the hand of God or your higher power in your life, I want to hear about it. Please send an email to Sheila@beyondcoincidence.com. Have a great day.